This is a demonstration of the TRM-CB probe. This is a probe that's designed to detect hydrocarbon liquids like crude oil or gasoline or jet fuel, and also to detect brine, produced water that might come out of an oil well or a gas well. The unique part about the probe is it's also designed to ignore rainwater or condensation or snowmelt. So it's meant to detect hazardous fluids, either hydrocarbon or brine, but ignore non-hazardous fresh water. So we're going to use the probe itself, which is this device. We're going to place it in a PVC T-fitting that's capped off at the bottom. And typically this would be in a collection sump or a low point. In the case of underground storage tanks or above ground storage tanks, you might drain into this little T-fitting with a slotted PVC conduit. The indicator is this flashing LED device called the Flasher BE. It has a little test button on the bottom of it that we'll be using from time to time. If we push it and the sensor is connected and all the wiring is intact, then we get that flashing light. And that's the same indication that we'll get for leak detections of either the hydrocarbons or the brine. We're going to start out with tap water, and we're going to add a little bit of tap water relatively slowly. This obviously much faster than any rainwater would accumulate, but the idea here is to slowly increase the depth of the water until it drains out the side of the T-fitting. That's as deep as the sensor will get. And as you can see, the sensor did not detect the leakage at all. So now we'll pull that out. We'll drain out the T. We'll do it again. And this time we'll use some of the brine that was collected from a well in West Virginia in November of 2015. So this time we'll be adding brine. It's a lot more salty and has some other chemicals in it, and so what we expect to have happen is it will detect it. And as you can see, the alarm triggered on the presence of brine. Nice thing about the sensor for brine or for water is that as soon as you lift it out, you can push the same little test button, and if the sensor is dry, it will reset. So now we're back to the monitoring mode and ready to make a next detection. So let's drain out this brine. And lastly, what we're going to do is demonstrate the ability of the sensor to detect hydrocarbons. So we'll put the sensor probe back in its little PVC T-fitting. We're going to be using Coleman camp stove fuel. This is naphtha. It's just easier to work with than crude oil, since crude oil contaminates the sensor and requires a little bit more cleanup. In this case, we should get the same detection. It might be a little bit slower because the sensor actually absorbs a little bit of the brine, but you can see, absorbs a little bit of the fuel, but you can see that once that occurs, we get the alarm same as we did for the brine. The difference here is that because this has actually been absorbed by the sensor material, it will not reset instantly. And if we push the reset button, it stays in alarm until the fuel has evaporated and allows this thing to return to its normal condition. For something like naphtha, that's going to take probably 15 to 30 minutes. For a heavier oil, or particularly for a crude oil, you might actually need to dip the sensor into naphtha several times, diluting the naphtha or diluting the crude oil until it runs clear, and then eventually the naphtha that you're using to dissolve any heavy oil or crude will evaporate and the sensor will reset. So the sensor is reusable many times, both after hydrocarbon detections and after brine detections. And as you saw, it will pretty well ignore rainwater or condensation or snowmelt. So that's the TRM-CB sensor. It's available in two versions. The version that we demonstrated here this morning is designed to work with this flasher type unit. There is also a relay version if you want to have some sort of connection to a PLC or remote monitoring system, and the performance is identical. It ignores rainwater or condensation or snowmelt, and responds to either produced water or to oil or other hydrocarbons.